My dad is the president of Johnson Group. He's both young and handsome. I've been dating him for 4 years, but I've never dared to tell my dad about it. He has never publicly acknowledged our relationship either. I asked him, when can we walk down the street together openly? He always replied, just wait a bit longer. It'll be soon. I held the pregnancy test report, but I saw him holding my best friend's hand as he entered a hotel. I tore up the report. I called my junior. I promised to marry you. Late at night, Ethan finally returned home tired. I saw him. He didn't greet me warmly as usual. He just quietly stood in front of the mirror, removing his makeup. I didn't expect. He actually still had so much energy. He walked up behind me. He lifted my skirt. Don't do that. I tried to stop him, but he had already thrust forcefully. In front of the mirror, he contentedly wrapped his arms around my waist. A smirk lingered at the corner of his mouth. What's wrong? Haven't you always liked my unexpected ways? This trick caught you off guard today, didn't it? I tightly grasped the dressing table. In the past, I always went along with him, but this time I gritted my teeth. No matter how intense Ethan's movements were, I tried my best not to make a sound. Several times, I almost wanted to push him away, but I still couldn't do it, all along. I have always had an indescribable dependence on him. I met him during our university years. That year, my dad threw a birthday banquet for me to celebrate my acceptance into college. He invited relatives and friends and his colleagues. Ethan appeared at that time. He was young and handsome. He is young and handsome. He has an outstanding presence. As soon as he appeared, he caught the attention of me and my best friend. Until my dad introduced me to Ethan. I still find it hard to believe. He is so young and handsome, and he is already the company president when Ethan wanted to shake my hand. My face turned red all of a sudden. The situation became a bit awkward. Later, there was an accident. I was hit by Ethan's car during my hospital stay. He personally took care of me. He was very thoughtful in everything he did. Since then, we started dating, but I never dared to tell my dad. He also didn't publicly acknowledge our relationship. At first, I found it quite interesting. It felt fresh, it felt good, but gradually, I didn't want to keep hiding anymore. I asked him several times, when can we hold hands openly? He softly told me, wait until you graduate from university. I will marry you then. His answer made me feel warm and at ease. But after graduating from university, he used being busy with work as an excuse. He didn't fulfill his promise right away. I understand him as well. After all, he manages such a large company. Men should prioritize their careers. After finding out I was pregnant at the hospital, I was especially happy. I immediately wanted to share this good news with Ethan, but what I didn't expect was, I actually saw him walking into a hotel with my best friend. Until he left my body satisfied, I was pulled back to reality by his voice. He said, I'm going to take a shower. Help me get my pajamas. He insisted that I do as he said. Then he walked into the bathroom. I adjusted my dress, walked to the sofa and turned on the TV, but in reality, I didn't even glance at the screen. Learning that he was actually with my best friend, it felt like my heart was being cut by a knife. I should have decisively rejected him and completely left him, but for some reason, I've returned to this place again. Once again, I couldn't help but get close to him. He came out after taking a shower. He noticed I didn't bring him his pajamas. He frowned slightly. He asked me, what's going on today? You don't seem to be in a good state. Are you feeling unwell? He walked up to me bare-skinned. I looked up at him. Finally, I mustered the courage to ask, when are we breaking up? My sudden question surprised Ethan a bit, but he didn't take it too seriously. After all, this isn't the first time I've had a falling out with him. In the past, every time I got angry, he would gently coax me and let me completely immerse in his embrace. But this time, he didn't realize I was serious. Instead, he said a bit impatiently, stop messing around. There are a lot of things going on at the company today. I'm really tired. You're tired, right? That's true, he has a new partner. How can it not be exhausting? All right, I'm going to take a break. He took a few steps, then stopped to say, by the way, your favorite LV bag. I've already placed the order. It will be delivered to your home soon. Remember to sign for it. He continued to say, and the Porsche you mentioned wanting last time, when I have some free time, I will go with you to buy it. Every time I lose my temper, he would go all out to buy me things. Very few people know that Ethan and I are together. The people who know about this, they all envy me. They say Ethan is completely devoted to me. He spoiled me to no end. One of my roommates even told me, if a man treated her like this, she would be willing to give everything for him. during that time. I was overjoyed. I felt like the happiest woman in the world. I once thought so too. I could continue to be happy with Ethan until we grow old together. But now, especially feeling his more indifferent attitude than before, my heart is growing colder. Watching him about to walk into the bedroom, I stood up. I shouted at him, "This time I really want to break up." Ethan heard my call. He stopped in his tracks. He turned around, looking at me with a puzzled expression. Seeing that I didn't seem to be joking, only then did he take it seriously. "Don't say that, okay, I love you like a fish can't live without water. I truly can't live without you." In the past, he would always comfort me, and I felt warm and at ease. But this time, I just feel it's particularly ridiculous. Can you really not live without me? If it's true, how could you still have other women? What I find hardest to accept is that woman turned out to be my best friend. She didn't say a word when she saw me. Ethan was taken aback for a moment. Then he walked up to me. He lifted my chin and said, "I understand why you're upset. Do you feel that I haven't made our relationship public? That I haven't given you a proper status? Don't worry. The promise I made to you, I've always kept it in mind. I have never forgotten. I promised you that I would marry you as soon as you graduate, although it's taken quite a while. But I feel that now is the right time. How about I go with you to meet your parents on March 8th? What do you think? If they have no objections, you can go get the marriage certificate this afternoon. I want you to truly become my wife on this day." He is still so dominant. He thinks he has completely controlled me, as if I was born to be his. No need for me to nod. He just took it upon himself to arrange everything. He thinks I've already been won over by him. He confidently kissed my forehead. Then he turned and went back inside. But he doesn't know. He can no longer make decisions for me, and I have already promised to marry someone else. When he finds out about these things, he will probably be very surprised. Will he regret it? Or does he not care at all? Maybe he even thinks it's a good thing. I don't know what expression will be on his face when he hears that I'm marrying someone else. I'm actually looking forward to that day coming. I couldn't sleep at all that night. By morning, Ethan walked into my room. I immediately pretended to be asleep. He stared at me for about 10 minutes. Then he gently kissed my forehead and said, "I've been really busy lately. It's been over 10 days since we had a meal together. Right, wait for me. I'll definitely come back early tonight." I kept my eyes closed. I still have my eyes closed. Sometimes, my heart will suddenly be touched. Ever since being with him, he always takes care of me exceptionally well. Perhaps, my love for him has penetrated to the bone. Ethan saw that I was still asleep, so he quickly left, until I heard the sound of the door closing. I finally opened my eyes. It was noon. He sent me a message. "Let's go to that hotel in West Bay tonight. You love their Western food the most. I've already reserved a table. Wait for me, baby." Not long after, he sent another photo. It was a pair of couple watches worth $1 million. One black, one white. I once told him that I wanted to wear them together. At that time, he was on the phone. I thought he didn't take it to heart, but I didn't expect he still bought them. If it were before, I would definitely be extremely excited. This time, I calmly replied, "Okay, I'll wait for you." I just tidied up a bit. Then I hurried to the restaurant. Today, I'm different from usual. In the past, every time I went on a date with him, I would spend a lot of effort on my appearance. Just choosing an outfit could take me 2 hours. But this time, I didn't even have the mood to get ready. I'm sitting alone in the restaurant. I waited until 6 in the evening. This was the time we agreed upon, but he never showed up. I didn't call to urge him. I just silently sipped on my bitter coffee without sugar, one cup after another, until 9 in the evening. I saw a post from my best friend Olivia. "Today is the most special day of my life." The picture shows a white diamond-studded watch. The couple's watch in that photo is exactly the one Ethan sent me. I never expected. Ethan didn't come to see me because he went to be with Olivia. What surprised me even more is, he actually gave the couple's watch that was supposed to be for me to Olivia. That's true. I was just overthinking. Perhaps I should have given up all hope. I forced a bitter smile. I got up and walked out of the restaurant. I stood at the door of the restaurant. I looked around. I lingered in place for a long time. Maybe even I don't know what I'm still hoping for. Soon, I saw Daniel. We got married half a month later. Back home, I stared at the photos all over the house. Suddenly, a wave of irritation surged in my heart. I lit a fire. I threw one photo after another of me and Ethan into the fire pit. Watching the flames grow stronger, my tears couldn't help but fall again. I kept asking myself, since I can't bear to part with them, why am I still burning them? Since I've decided to burn them, Why is it still hard to let go? But I can't find the answer myself. Why did you burn our photos? A sharp scream interrupted my chaotic thoughts. I turned around to look. Ethan appeared out of nowhere. There wasn't a sound at all. He looked at the burned photos. He seemed very flustered. He had never been this nervous before. He tried to reach for the photos, but as soon as the photo touched the fire, it caught fire. There was no way to save it. His hand got burned. He looked at me with a face full of blame. Emily, why did you do this? Weren't you the one who cared the most about these? Did you not say before that these are our most precious memories? They are irreplaceable. Seeing the panic in his eyes, I suddenly found it a bit funny. I'm clearly standing right in front of him, yet he doesn't care about me. Instead, he's so anxious about those photos that can be retaken anytime. Isn't that quite ironic? You tell me, what's wrong with you today? Why did you burn the photos? Ethan asked me again. He might not be able to accept that the photos were destroyed. He may also struggle to understand my sudden action of burning the photos. He ignores me to please my best friend, yet he acts like he cares about me a lot. This contrast makes me feel very uncomfortable. I was silent for a moment. Looking at him, I said, "These photos are old. I plan to reprint some. Let's not keep these old ones." So that's how it is. After hearing what I said, Ethan seemed much more relaxed. He walked in front of me, as usual. He gently kissed me and said, "Next time, don't do it so suddenly. I can't handle it a bit. It's quite scary for me, too." I asked him strangely, "You can be afraid, too. What are you worried about?" "I'm afraid of losing you." Ethan still speaks so gently and considerately, but now, his voice makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. "This is for you." Ethan turned around. He took out a bracelet. I stared at the sparkling gems on the bracelet. It felt increasingly ridiculous in my heart. "I also prepared a gift for you." I took out the divorce notice and the wedding invitation from the box. I handed it to Ethan. He was about to open it. I quickly stopped him and said, "Wait to open it in half a month. Is that okay?" "Why?" Ethan looked at me with a questioning gaze. I said calmly, "Because it will be more meaningful to open it that day." So mysterious. "Then let's wait 7 days to open it." Ethan casually tossed the box aside. He immediately hugged me. He is always full of energy. He always wants to be close to me. With his willful behavior, I instinctively went along with it. Clothes were scattered on the ground, carelessly discarded. This might be the last intimate moment between him and me. Thinking of this, I suddenly pushed him away. "What happened?" Ethan asked me, looking completely puzzled. I looked at him and said softly, "It's nothing, you lie down, I want to be on top." After a while, he fell asleep, satisfied. I got up and walked to the vanity. I stared at myself in the mirror. Suddenly, I felt a bit reluctant to leave at that moment. Daniel's text interrupted my thoughts. "Dear, I miss you. Thinking that in 7 days we will be getting married." I was so excited that I couldn't sleep all night. I looked at his message. I thought for a long time, and finally replied, "Me too." After sending this message, I regretted it. This response was indeed a bit perfunctory. Right, but Daniel seemed particularly excited. He said, "Since the first time I saw you in high school, I have been looking forward to this day." He said a lot of things. I fell asleep in a daze. When I woke up, it was already noon the next day. I hurried to the hospital, planning to have the surgery to terminate the pregnancy. But when the doctor asked me if I was sure about this, I hesitated. Why should I give up this child? Rather than let me suffer alone, it would be better to let Ethan share this pain. I left the hospital immediately. Back home, I found the breakup letter I had written to Ethan before. I revised the contents. March 8th. This day soon arrived. Ethan promised me he would have dinner with my parents today. To make everything clear, come with me to get the marriage certificate this afternoon. I don't know if he still remembers this promise. I didn't remind him either. After returning home, I told my parents that my boyfriend would come today. As soon as they heard the news, they immediately got nervous. They got ready. Dad was cleaning up. Mom was busy in the kitchen. They were bustling about. Time passed little by little. Before I knew it, it was 11 o'clock. Ethan still hadn't arrived. Just like last time, he stood me up again. Sure enough, once there's a first time, there will be a second and third. Maybe he's already with someone else. He probably forgot about this matter long ago, but none of this matters anymore. Your boyfriend still hasn't arrived. My parents asked me. I smiled and called Daniel. "Daniel, come to my house. We're getting married. You need to meet my parents." Daniel listened as I suddenly made a request. He wasn't upset at all. He immediately agreed. He put aside everything he was doing. In less than half an hour, he hurried to my house. Seeing him out of breath, I couldn't help but think of Ethan. Since he truly no longer cares about me, why should I care then? I took Daniel's hand and walked into the house. My parents were very pleased with him. Our marriage was officially confirmed. That evening, Daniel and I went shopping and watched a movie together. As we reached the entrance of the hotel, Daniel stopped. I understood his thoughts, so I fulfilled his wishes and let him experience my tenderness. He said it was a scene that would only appear in his dreams. I didn't know how to respond to him. I could only try to cooperate. I didn't go to Ethan's anymore. I stayed at home, preparing to be a good bride for Daniel. A few days later, Daniel called me. I have arranged everything for the wedding. I'll send it to you shortly, just confirm it, I replied. Keep it simple. The wedding doesn't need to be too complicated. I hadn't finished speaking yet. Suddenly, Ethan's voice came from behind me. Wedding? What wedding? Who are you getting married to? Ethan came to my house without any greeting. This surprised me a bit. Even if he came, what difference does it make? I looked at Ethan's surprised expression. I said faintly, "That's right. It's my wedding." Ethan stared at me in shock. I could feel his breathing becoming rapid. He looked very uneasy. His face was full of tension, confusion, and panic. At that moment, his expression was truly colorful. He tightly grasped my arm. The grip was very strong. "It makes me feel pain. You're getting married." To whom he seems to be questioning me, almost like he's warning me, seeing him still so assertive. Instead, I feel relieved. He's still the same. He hasn't changed at all. I just don't plan to tell him the truth right now. "Look how nervous you are." "Actually, my friend is talking to me about his wedding. I have to be a bridesmaid." Ethan sighed with relief, but still frowned and asked, "Your friend? Who is it?" he asked. "Who is getting married?" I found it a bit funny to hear, so I deliberately said, "It's my best friend Olivia. You know her too." Right? Ethan was stunned for a moment. He looked at me with slight surprise. He didn't believe it at all, because just last night, Olivia posted a status in her friend circle, lying in the arms of her beloved. "It's really warm. I wish this moment could last forever." Ethan was taken aback for a moment. He pinched my face with slight dissatisfaction. "You're being mischievous again. Is it because I haven't been paying attention to you these past few days? You feel uncomfortable all over." He thought I still enjoyed the time spent playing around with him. I pushed him away. "Speak, don't touch me. This is my home. I'm afraid my parents will see." As I said this, I was still looking into his eyes. I don't know why. Even until now, I surprisingly still held a glimmer of hope, until I saw evasion and fear in his gaze. Only then did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. See, he really is that kind of person. He doesn't dare to publicly acknowledge our relationship to my dad. Yet he only thinks about possessing me. In 2 days, it's my birthday. Early in the morning, Ethan came to find me. He said he would give me a special surprise. I originally planned to celebrate with Daniel, but in the end, I got into Ethan's car. Ethan was in a particularly good mood today. We talked a lot along the way. We also reminisced about the times we spent together. In the past, every time we talked about these topics, we would get really excited, immersed in it, joking with each other, talking about each other's embarrassing moments. But this time, I just quietly looked out at the changing scenery, listening quietly as he spoke passionately. Before long, Ethan also noticed that something was off with me. He frowned and said, "You don't seem very happy today. I remember that every time I spent my birthday with you, you would always dress up as Snow White. No one looked forward to this day more than you." I looked out the window, suddenly feeling a bit lost. If I can't be with the one I love, what's the point of a birthday? After saying that, I withdrew my gaze. I turned to look at Ethan. I asked softly, "If one day you leave me, don't say that." Ethan interrupted me. His tone was firm. "I will not leave you. Never, even if the world changes. I will always be by your side." In the past, when he said these words, I always felt warm inside. But now I don't feel that sweetness. Instead, I feel a bit uncomfortable. "You don't believe me. I will prove it to you." Seeing that I remained silent, he seemed a bit distracted. He let go of the steering wheel. Smiling, he said to me, "I would be willing to die for you. There are many cars on the road. One careless move could cause an accident." Seeing him so excited, I smiled and said, "I was just testing you. How could I not believe you?" Only then did he show a satisfied smile. He reached out to grip the steering wheel, but it's already too late. With a bang, the car accident couldn't be avoided. The airbag deployed instantly. My forehead was cut by glass shards. My head was buzzing in a state of panic. I felt something cloth-like. I wanted to use it to press on the wound, but I found out it was a woman's lace underwear. As soon as Ethan woke up, he looked at me. He asked, "Are you okay?" I saw blood all over his head, but his first concern was for me. I knew his concern was sincere, but what good does that do? I couldn't hold it any longer, I said, losing control of my emotions. The consequence of distraction is like this. You should care more about her. After saying that, I shook off the stains on my hands. I turned around, pushed open the car door, and walked out. The driver across from me got out of the car when he saw my bloodied face. He hurried over to ask, "Are you okay? You bled a lot. Should I take you to the hospital?" "Thank you, no need." I declined his help. I quickened my pace. Not long after, Ethan caught up with me. He embraced me like usual. He intended to kiss me directly as always, but this time, I didn't comply with him like before. I kicked him and slapped him hard. I ignored his pained expression. I turned and got into a taxi. Drive. The driver glanced at me. He asked, "To the hospital?" I hurriedly said, "Just drive." I quickly urged the driver to drive, because Ethan was running towards us. As soon as the car started moving, I saw in the rearview mirror that Ethan was still chasing after us. Until he fell to the ground. The driver asked concernedly, "That boy who was chasing you, should we stop?" "No need," I said softly. The voice was so low that only I could hear it. "He is no longer my boyfriend." After a simple bandaging at the hospital, I returned home but felt restless. By 9 o'clock in the evening, my phone finally rang. I gave a bitter smile. I felt so pathetic. It's gotten to this point, and I'm still waiting for this call. I opened my phone and saw that the caller ID was not Ethan, but Olivia. I had always considered her my best friend. I never expected that she would hurt me like this. I was so angry that I hung up the phone, but she called back. After thinking for a moment, I still answered. I wanted to hear what she had to say. As soon as the call connected, I heard Olivia's voice choked with tears. "Emily, I'm sorry. I heard Ethan say you had an accident. You scared me to death." I asked somewhat unhappily. "We had a car accident. Why are you apologizing?" "Me." Olivia was silent for a moment. I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the phone. "I'm sorry. I know very well that he is your boyfriend, but I still went with him. I'm sorry." It sounded like it was hard for her to speak. I almost couldn't help but laugh. "Stop pretending. If you really understood shame, you wouldn't do something like this. The posts you shared. Although you didn't mention Ethan, don't you want me to see them? Now Ethan belongs to you. Please stop acting." I angrily hung up the phone. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I opened Olivia's contact. I blocked her. Just after doing that, my phone rang again. This time it should be Ethan calling. He might be with Olivia. I answered the phone. I was ready to scold him and then block him. But once the call connected, I heard Olivia's voice again. "Emily, I know you have complaints about me, but please don't hang up. It's Ethan. Ethan, after you left the accident scene, he fainted due to severe injuries. He is still in the hospital fighting for his life. The doctor said. He might. Wah, wah, wah." Olivia's words tightened my heart. "This is impossible. He was fine at that time. He ran after my taxi for quite a while. He couldn't be that seriously injured. The doctor said if he had just stayed put and waited for help, the injuries wouldn't have been severe." Olivia cried as she said, "It's all his fault for desperately chasing your taxi. As a result, he suffered from insufficient blood flow to the brain. The injuries worsened. Ethan's situation is critical. I'm begging you, come and see him." A loud clap. The phone fell from my hand. Looking at the phone with a shattered screen on the ground, my heart felt like it shattered too. Although I was very angry with Ethan, I couldn't accept the fact that he suddenly passed away. How could this happen? How could he leave so suddenly? I hurried out the door to the hospital. As soon as I got downstairs, I saw Daniel's car parked there. He noticed me rushing down. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, there's still plenty of time." I suddenly remembered. Daniel invited me to meet his parents tonight. His parents are abroad for business. It's rare for them to come back, but I can't think about that right now. I grabbed Daniel's arm. "Can you take me to the hospital?" Daniel stared at me. He was momentarily stunned. Then he got in the car right away. In the car, he tried to speak several times, but I didn't say it out loud. I know what he wants to ask. Tears flowed down unconsciously. I said to him with a trembling voice, "It's my first love. He is in the hospital now. A friend said he might not make it." I'm not sure if Daniel would care about this, but I feel it's necessary to be honest with him. After hearing this, he smiled at me. "Thank you for being willing to tell me this. But you need to know, What I care about is you as a person, not your past. Thank you." At that moment, Daniel really made me feel a warmth. That warmth felt very similar to what Ethan used to give me. It really felt like that. Arriving at the hospital, I couldn't care about Daniel. I immediately got out of the car and ran into the hospital. I looked around everywhere, but I still couldn't see Ethan. Could it be? I suddenly had an ominous premonition. It felt like my heart was about to break, just when I was feeling down. As I walked through the hospital corridor, preparing to leave, I accidentally bumped into a man's arms. He said, "You really were worried about me." Ethan's familiar and gentle voice reached my ears. "I scared you, didn't I? I'm really sorry. I honestly didn't know how to explain it to you. I had to resort to this method." Seeing Ethan appear right in front of me, I was almost about to break down. He deceived me once again. He played with my trust again. I angrily punched his chest. "Liar, you lied to me. You're a big liar." Ethan silently endured it until I stopped. He hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry. The moment you left me, I finally understood. I absolutely cannot lose you. I have already cut off contact with Olivia. Come back to my side." "Okay." His words suddenly made me wake up. I gave a wry smile. "You realized you can't live without me? Now you want to make amends if I go back. Wouldn't that be foolish? Stop dreaming. I will never forgive you in this lifetime. You are really too much." I slapped Ethan hard. Then I turned and left. I hadn't walked far when he grabbed my hand and said, "I have been wholeheartedly devoted to you. Isn't that enough? What do you want me to do to be able to forgive me? Be sincere with each other." His words made me feel particularly ridiculous. I gave him the best years of my youth. As a result, he had an affair with my best friend. "This is what you call being wholeheartedly devoted, isn't that laughable?" I looked at him coldly. "Your complaining attitude. Do you think I'm being willful?" "It was my mistake." Ethan furrowed his brow slightly. "Go ahead. I didn't mean to blame you. No matter how willful you were in the past, I have never blamed you." "Right." His attitude once again felt unacceptable to me. Oh, I remembered. Maybe he has always been like this. Back then, I would accept him. I would tolerate everything about him, including his domineering nature. But now, I can no longer accept it. "You selfish and arrogant person," I glared at him angrily. "Let go of me." I tried to shake off his hand with all my might. His strength was just too great. No matter how I struggled, I couldn't break free. I had no choice but to bite his hand. He immediately let go in pain. I didn't hesitate for a moment. I turned around and ran out of the hospital. Once I got into Daniel's car, I closed the car door. I finally felt a sense of relief. Through the car window, I saw Ethan closely following behind. He noticed that I got into someone else's car. He looked quite surprised. He kept staring at Daniel inside the car. Daniel was also sizing him up. Their eyes met, as if sparks could fly. I didn't want to stay any longer. I immediately said to Daniel, "He's just an unreliable person. Drive on. I don't want to see him again." "Okay." Daniel stopped looking outside. He started the car. After seeing this, Ethan knocked on the window. He kept shouting for me to get out of the car. I didn't want to pay him any attention anymore. I urged Daniel to drive faster. The car slowly drove away. Ethan's figure became smaller and smaller. I thought he would chase after us like before, but unexpectedly, he ran in the opposite direction, watching his figure disappear into the night. I felt inexplicably a bit lost inside. What surprised me even more was, when our car stopped at the traffic light, Ethan's sports car suddenly appeared from the side. How is this person still not done? As soon as I saw him, I couldn't help but get angry. Daniel smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, I'll show him my strength." As soon as the green light turned on, Daniel and Ethan slammed on the gas. The two sports cars sped off. They were going so fast it felt like flying. The street was bustling with traffic, but Daniel had no intention of slowing down. Instead, he drove even faster. My heart was racing. I was extremely tense. In my memory, Daniel has always been a gentle and polite person. I've never seen him this crazy before. "Drive slower, Daniel." I tried to remind him, but he seemed not to hear. He was completely focused on driving. It felt like we were in a real-life version of Fast and Furious. Later, the car was stopped by the uncles. Both of them were criticized and fined. The car was also impounded. Now they were much more obedient. When the driver came to pick us up, it was already late at night. The night breeze made me shiver. I was cold and trembling. Seeing this, Daniel immediately took off his coat to put it on me, but just as he was about to drape the coat over me, another coat was already thrown over my shoulders first. It turned out to be Ethan's coat. "The weather has turned cold. You have a weak stomach. Don't catch a cold. I don't need you to worry. I immediately took off the coat, trying to return it to Ethan, but he walked away without looking back, watching his back. I was so angry that I threw his coat on the ground. Seeing me do this, Daniel smiled as he draped his jacket over me. After returning home, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind and body were troubled by Ethan's situation. In a half-dream, half-awake state, I had a dream. In the dream, Daniel and Ethan were racing. Neither of them gave way to the other. In the end, Daniel's car went off the cliff. I woke up from the nightmare. I opened my eyes. Daniel was already beside me. I had a nightmare. I immediately hugged him. I'm sorry. I dreamed about you racing with Ethan. As a result, your car had an accident? Why say sorry? Daniel smiled and leaned close to my ear. He whispered, what you think about during the day is what you dream about at night. If you dream about me, it means you have me in your heart. That's enough. He is truly very gentle. Afternoon. I went to try on wedding dresses with Daniel. Daniel originally wanted to buy me a top-quality pink diamond to use as an engagement ring. This really touched me, but that ring worth $300 million was suddenly bought by a mysterious person in the entire South City. There are very few people who can afford such diamond rings. This became a hot topic of discussion for everyone. Daniel was a bit down. I'm sorry for not being able to buy that pink diamond. I will definitely make it up to you later. Seeing him in low spirits, I comforted him by saying, it's okay. You are much more important than that diamond ring. After taking wedding photos, Daniel drove me home. He originally wanted to come up and sit for a while, but I felt it was getting late, so I urged him to go back and rest early. I never expected Ethan would show up at my house. He was sitting face to face with my parents. It looks like it. He has already told them everything. My parents are looking at me with strange eyes. Ethan saw me return. He glanced at my dad. My dad shook his head and said, our daughter has grown up. Let her decide her own matters. After saying that, he took my mom inside. Only Ethan and I were left in the living room. He slowly walked in front of me. He knelt on one knee. He took out a ring. It was the pink diamond that Daniel intended to buy as an engagement ring. He said softly, I can't remember how it started. Maybe it was about you. There was a special feeling, suddenly realized, I have deeply fallen in love with you. His singing is really beautiful. He once told me, this song he sings only for me. Every time I heard him sing this song before, I felt particularly moved and happy. But this time, I listened to it with tears in my eyes until he finished singing. My emotions still couldn't settle. Emily, I'm sorry. I've always been indecisive. That led to the current outcome. Please give me another chance. Let me love you well with all the time I have left. He looked at me, waiting for my response. If he had done this earlier, I might have agreed. But now, it's all too late. I'm sorry, we have no chance left. I didn't accept his ring. I ran back to my room in tears. The wedding day soon arrived. He always noticed I was off. Daniel asked with concern, what's wrong? Is there something bothering you? No, it's just, I looked at Daniel. I didn't know what to say for a moment. I had to change the subject. I didn't expect we would decide to spend our lives together so quickly. Daniel listened. He looked at me with determination. I will make you the happiest woman in the world. Daniel was busy greeting the guests. I took a moment to send a message to Ethan. This is the gift I gave you. You can open it now. Inside that gift was a breakup letter and a pregnancy checkup report. He can't escape, no matter if he wants to or not. He must come to my wedding. I want him to live with regret for the rest of his life. As expected, in less than 10 minutes, Ethan started calling me nonstop. I watched the incoming call flashing on the screen. I simply turned off my phone. I held Daniel's hand, walking towards the wedding venue, accepting the blessings from family and friends. I thought Ethan would arrive soon. The wedding ended. He never showed up. Is he really not coming? Just as Daniel and I were about to leave the wedding venue, suddenly someone ran in front of me. He was Ethan's secretary. I had seen him several times. He was out of breath. He looked at me anxiously and said, Ethan rushed over to see you. There was a car accident on the way. Hurry, come with me quickly. He wanted to take me away, but Daniel pushed him away directly. Daniel looked at me. He said seriously, this is fake. You have been deceived by him many times. You can't be fooled again this time. I looked into Daniel's determined eyes and nodded. As Daniel pulled me away, I heard Ethan's secretary shouting from behind, this time it's real. If you don't see him, you will definitely regret it. I replied to him without looking back. He didn't come to my wedding. It's not me who will regret. It's him.